bottle is in the system and this bottle isn't. Like that's just
Yeah.
an
Yeah.
abrasive point.
Yeah. Unless
Um,
aluminum, it gets really like, well, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
right, exactly. And then the third thing is, like we mentioned, independent redemption centers and high handling fees that allow them to sustain their operations. Like we do have a handling fee here, which is great, but it's also been neglected, just like the deposit, which means redemption centers are closing all over the place.
Yeah.
They can't afford to operate in places like Manhattan. So that value's got to be high enough. And change, be updated frequently enough to keep the system healthy and going.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then the thing that, this is less kind of coalition standard, but was really Sure We Can's interest in this, as well as like our partner organizations across the country, including the one in Oregon, that we want to, and something that's not so precedented in bottle bills in America, is we want to see language that like directly and explicitly recognizes and supports canners in these bills. And I think there's different like forms that can manifest. And again, it's sort of unprecedented. So like,
Yeah.
there's not like a standard way right now to do that, at least in America.
And another thing that I'll add is that what happened in Oregon is that their bottle bill is essentially managed by a PRO. Is that a term that you're familiar you've come across?
Sorry, can you repeat that? I just couldn't hear you.
Yeah, their system is managed by a PRO, which is OBRC. A PRO is a producer responsibility organization.
Yep. I just had that conversation with Beyond Plastic yesterday. So this is the first time I'm learning about that like acronym specifically, but the Jenny did actually bring that exact point up.
Yeah. So that's essentially putting beverage manufacturers in charge of a system that is meant to hold them accountable.
Yep.
So we advocate against PROs, generally speaking, and we feel like they should not be the key decision makers. They should be stakeholders, certainly,
Mhm.
but to be put in charge of it would reduce transparency radically. Um, and actually one of the resources we can send you is a case study of the Oregon bottle bill that was done a couple years ago that I think nuances the sort of challenges that they've faced so that you can take all of that into account.
No, that
There
was
are logistical and efficiency advantages to a PRO system, sort of in the abstract. And you see examples maybe in Europe where they're implemented more effectively, but they also have to be implemented with like strong, clear, explicit regulatory frameworks. And here in America, that's a high and ambitious expectation, I would say.
yeah.
So that's sort of why we choose the kind of more broader, like we don't think PROs are a good idea for U.S. bottle bills. But there is more nuance to that. I mean, there is nuance to that conversation, but you'll see that in the case study Christine's uh, talking about.
Okay. So I know one of the other things, just for time purposes that we did like kind of talk a little bit about was specifically like in this drafted bill, when one of the subsections, it does say like, except as otherwise provided by this section, a dealer shall accept or return from any person an empty or returnable container of any kind, size, and brand that is sold or offered for sale by the dealer. So something that Brooke had brought up is that the language was a little bit vague, it's confusing, and she's trying to figure out, like, does this mean that the dealer, they don't have to collect those materials? Do they not sell it? Will this limit the amount of materials consumers end up returning? So I was curious kind of if you guys had any takes on like the dealer side and what that, means on the New York side. If that's unclear, please let me know if I can clarify.
Just like take on structuring the system on the initiator side, or like the retailer side, so that it's maximally effective. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I think that's probably the gist of it.
Sure. Well, I mean, this is kind of like there's lots of hay being made in the conversation here in New York around the burdens imposed upon retailers, especially like smaller liquor stores or bodegas, um, who don't, or like bars and restaurants that don't have a lot of room to hang on to containers that they're obligated to redeem, you know? Um, and so this is again why we really advocate hard for handling fees, redemption center investments. We really feel like retailers shouldn't be burdened in that way. Like if there was a redemption center in like every community board in New York, or two or three, like then you would have places being able to say like, okay, we don't need to keep that stuff. Just bring it to the place around the corner. They'll
Yeah.
redeem it. And redemption centers are best equipped to redeem the broadest range of material. Um, there's not the concern about like, only redeeming what's sold at any given place, which is a common thing you see, or that's in the New York law. So like, if a supermarket only sells Coke, they don't sell Pepsi. They don't have to redeem your Pepsi containers.
And they don't have to redeem it. They don't have to accept materials if they are under a certain square footage,
Mhm.
Yeah.
in recognition of the fact that they wouldn't have space to store all those empties. So is there something in the proposed bill that makes reference to square footage for dealers?
To be honest, just off of top of my head, I don't know.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah,
but
that'd be something to look at.
yeah, I'm sure, going back and like reading it, there's probably a section on that. My I guess like change in gears is because after finding out yesterday that they might be scrapping that bill draft, I'm almost like hesitant on just like rereading it and like getting more information, because what I've been doing, at least for them, is more on like a literature review side of just taking like very basic, like here's X, Y, and Z when you break down Maine's bill, when you break down Michigan's bill, when you break down New York's bill, things like that. So from a square footage standpoint, I don't know specifically if that is listed in there.
It's an important piece, especially on the politicking side. I mean, the liquor stores and convenience stores, at least in New York, they have a strong voice in the lobbying landscape around proposals like this. So I mean, and their concerns are reasonable as well. So I think it's, as far as like passing a bill and making sure that all the stakeholders are gonna be able to get what they need out of it, it's an important piece.
Mhm. Yeah, so that'd be an interesting point of comparison. I actually am realizing as we're talking to you that when you finish your research and you write up your report that compares these different bottle bills, that would be super useful for us.
Yeah,
Would
definitely.
you send it? I
Yeah.
mean, we have resources like that, and we've created some of our own comparative, sort of documents, but might be useful for us to look at what you come up with.
Yeah, we'd love to see.
Yeah, no, that would be fine. Right now I'm kind of working off of, I'll do like a really quick screen share and then I have one more question for you guys. I'm working off of a really loosely tied compare and contrast sheet like this that we've been kind of doing for the last couple weeks. And
Great.
I have
Sure.
probably about 7 others about like regulatory towards us. And then yesterday Jenny was telling me to basically stop reworking the wheel because it already exists.
Great.
So I didn't know that, but
Where did you find that doc?
she sent these directly to me. I actually have a bunch of resources, and I was gonna do a big resource I speak with one more person on Monday. So got a big CRI guide. I got just like the bottle bill guide, just like basics like XYZ.
Yeah.
That's you guys. There's one more thing. This was the big one. Just kind of like the briefings and updates, and then is this you guys again? Maybe my apps or yeah, this was the she said this was like actually something she wrote for CRI back in the day of why the 10-cent incentive is crucial. And I haven't actually dove into it yet because I just got it yesterday, but I think this is going to answer a lot of my questions.
Oh, cool. Would you share that with me?
Absolutely, yeah. I can put it in the
Thank you.
chat right now.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen that.
Me neither.
That was a while ago, 2006.
Yeah. And that's and the craziest thing is that when this was written, so Hawaii was the last state so far to basically pass a bill since then.
Right. Wow.
Yeah. So one more question for everybody, and I think this one, I'm kind of going a little bit loose here, but I think this one's actually really relevant for you guys. And, do you guys have like any data on, how closely people are following the law and like what that's contributing to their society, but like the economics, the structure, like the social system of New York as a whole, maybe, for the people who are specifically following this.
Are you talking about whether or not beverage distributors, like the multinationals, whether they're following the law, whether the retailers are following the law, whether
When Brooke wrote the question, she did put like, when the law is broken, is this done primarily by manufacturers, distributors, or by individuals? I would have to imagine the people who don't want this to happen are the ones cutting corners, but I'm just curious if you guys actually have like any case studies, data, anything that would kind of support that claim.
There's basically no data on fraud.
Okay.
And this is part of the issue in the lobbying, is that there's lots and lots of rhetoric around it, but basically no evidence. So Manhattan Beer, for example, that distributes here in New York, is, claims they lose millions and millions a year to bottle fraud.
Okay.
They don't say where, they don't say by whom, they don't say what. So,
right.
And we've experienced like sketchy audits from distributors for sure.
We've experienced huge delay. You should come to our lot right now and you would see evidence of this.
Yes.
We experienced huge delays in compliance by the distributors to come and pick up the materials that we have sorted and ready for them.
Yeah.
And so that's a
Yeah.
a major issue.
And a key piece of this is that the regulatory agency that has the responsibility to oversee the law, which in New York is the Department of Environmental Conservation,
I was just gonna get there.
Is basically has no capacity at all to do so. I mean, not even just the bottle law, but there's other environmental laws here in New York, like the plastic bag ban, stuff like that, that they just literally do not enforce.
Yeah.
So you'd think that they would be the ones tracking this kind of thing, but they're not doing it. So a key piece, I think, in conceiving and constructing legislation is making sure that there's an oversight and regulatory, like a transparency framework.
Yeah.
That would allow some of this data to actually be created.
Exactly. So yeah, putting in the law some language around data collection and research, right, to be able to get data points that are going to be key for understanding how well the system is actually working.
We're trying to, Sure We Can is pushing right now within the coalition to try to propose a shared platform that the state can manage, where like invoices and payments and everything could be posted, so that there would just be one place where all this stuff would be stored and tracked, and you could pull up it would be amazing to see all that too, like all the data, see where it moves and how it's happening, because there's so much going on, but it's all murky and mysterious.
That makes sense. Yeah. And I think that kind of just goes directly to the people lobbying against it. And the resource, I think Jenny was telling me yesterday that at one point they were lobbying them 9 times to 1, at one point. So it's, the reason.
I'm not sure what you mean.
What do you mean?
The people like working against not like amending a bill, getting a bill passed, either on, the Coke and Pepsi side or whoever it is. When they do that and they're lobbying against it, they're out doing it. I don't know what the correct terminology is, but they're out doing it by almost 9 times to the people like you guys on your side.
Certainly much better resource than we are.
Absolutely.
So we have about 5 minutes left, and I want to kind of leave it, if you guys like, I think that is, this has been really lovely and definitely informative, and I'm actually in the New York area, when I work and stuff, so I would love to actually schedule something to maybe come like see the center and stuff, because I've never actually been to one, and I'm genuinely curious. I've put in a lot of time to the project, so I'll coordinate with you guys about that. Obviously,
love to have you.
What was that?
We'd love to have you.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And really just 4 months left, like any final remarks, and this is going to be recorded, I'm going to take some notes, I'm going to bring it to Brooke and Chris, and anything else you guys really think about in terms of bottle bills that comes to mind.
I mean, I guess just like, it's worth the fight. Bottle bills are effective, they work. So keep at it and it'll happen, like it has in other states. Also that it's easy to kind of like get distracted, I think, in this conversation by like fraud, for example. I mean,
Yeah.
Mhm.
it's a narrative that gets a lot of play in the conversation, but it doesn't really help anything except like paralyze the conversation and keep anything from happening, right? Which is of course the goal
Yeah.
in the case of distributors and people who want to stop it. But there's a few of these red herrings. I mean, I think bottle bills are effective partly because they're simple, elegant systems, and that's
Mhm.
part of what we're advocating for in New York is like maintaining a degree of simplicity that supports the system's effectiveness and people using it, right? Like it has to be useful and accessible, and part of that is its simplicity and comprehensiveness.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Equity.
So
For
yeah,
sure.
yeah. So I just to keep those things in mind as you compare and notice like where, like for example, where in Oregon where certain things that seem simple maybe end up being more complex, like a PRO structure. So it's meant to consolidate and simplify and make it efficient, but it also makes it more cumbersome just to operate.
Yeah.
And it also consolidates power up at the top.
Exactly. Yeah.
And all the money flows up.
Yeah.
Got it.
So we want to see a system where like anybody could just get started running a redemption center, like where it's accessible from all angles. It's transparent, it's easy to use for canners, it's easy to use for redemption operators, it's easy to use for distributors, and it'll work.
Amazing. Thank you for that. Anything on your end, Christine?
I guess the one thing to maybe be attentive to as you are contributing to crafting the bill is municipal recycling contracts. We really have felt pressure on our community from the DSNY, the Department of Sanitation, because of the contract that they have with Sims Recycling. And my understanding is that in New Jersey, Sims is also the contractor in some cities currently. I
Okay.
think that's the case.
That does sound correct.
Yeah. And so you just want to keep that on your radar in terms of what are the terms of those contracts between the city and the municipal contractor hired to manage recycling, because they're going to want all of the stuff that's in the bottle bill, because those are good, clean recyclables. So you want to make sure that those contracts, I don't, it's a little bit out of your hands, but you want to kind of keep it on your radar as something that's going to impact the effectiveness of the bottle bill.
Amazing.
And the politics and getting it moved.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. I don't want it to cut off before I have the chance to say goodbye. I have to upgrade the student version, but thank you guys for your time. I genuinely appreciate it. I will be sending a recap email and absolutely will be sharing the final project with you. And I would love to come visit the center. So thank you for your time. I genuinely appreciate it. And I'm going to take all this great stuff back to Chris and Brooke.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, good luck.
Thanks, Alexandria.
Thank you. Have a great weekend.
You too. Take care.
Bye-bye.